Hello, I'm Megan Sullivan of Medfield Environment Action. I'm also a member of the Medfield Energy Committee. Both groups are pleased to co-sponsor this webinar for you to learn more about community choice aggregation. This warrant article will be on the town meeting agenda in May of 2021. I wanted to let you know that although this webinar was recorded in July of 2020, it is accurate and up to date, and the questions and answers at the end of the program are very informative. If you have any additional questions, you can find many of the resources on Medfield Energy Committee's section of the website for the town of Medfield, or you may also visit Medfield Environment Action's website, which is meamedfield.org. We hope you enjoyed this presentation and learn a lot about how community choice aggregation really is a win-win for Medfield.
So as a place of introduction, I just want to say that when you get your bill from Eversource, you get a bill that has two different kinds of charges. One is for supply and one is for delivery. And if you look at this exhibit right here, the delivery is about half your bill. And this is what you pay Eversource to maintain the lines, to bring the electricity to your house, to repair things when they need to be repaired, and to send you your bill, all that administrative things. The other portion of the bill is the supply charge, and that is the portion of the bill that we're actually going to be talking about tonight. So I'm really happy to be having this conversation with you, and that you are here to learn more about community choice aggregation. But it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have Larry Cretion and Jema Braga here with us tonight from the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. They have really partnered with us over the course of the last 6 months to educate the Medfield Energy Committee on what community choice aggregation is and how it really is great for Medfield. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to them. Really great to have you here.
Thank you, Megan. And I think Jema has the slides ready to go. So everybody in Medfield, thank you for having us. We would have been happy to have gone out to Medfield and see you in person, but that's not in the cards. I'm Larry Cretion. I'm the Executive Director, and Jema is our Renewable Energy Procurement Director. We consider ourselves to be pioneers in the field of the voluntary renewable energy market, which is where people take a choice to buy more renewable energy than required by law. And we've grown the program quite a bit, and Jema is the person responsible for buying the renewable energy that we offer to the public. Next slide, please.
All right, not going. Let's see. There we go.
Okay. We're a nonprofit organization. We're based in Boston and Providence, Rhode Island. And our mission is to harness the power of energy consumers to speed the transition to a low carbon future. So we're very focused on greenhouse gas reduction and what energy consumers can do. And when we touch an issue in the energy field, we always think about, should we run a program that consumers can tap into, and or should we also be advocates for public policy? In many cases, we do both. We have advocates who work Beacon Hill and the State House in Rhode Island on public policy, but we offer a wide variety of programs that consumers can choose to participate in. You can go to our website, which is greenenergyconsumers.org, and learn more about all our different programs. We've been around quite a long time, 1982. That's when we were founded. Tonight's agenda, we'll talk about community choice aggregation. We call it green municipal aggregation, or GMA, but it's the same thing. Various types of programs, the status of community choice aggregation in Massachusetts, and one way to be aware of greenwashing that can often take place in this market. Jema will run through the slides, and I'll be here to help out to answer any questions. So thank you.
Great. So let's get going with the nitty-gritty. So I think it's a good time to start with the first poll of the evening. So if you can kick that off. All right, so you should all be seeing in your screen a poll from Zoom. And the question is, if your electricity supply comes from basic service from Eversource, what percentage of your mix comes from fossil fuels? You have there 5 answers. You can take a couple seconds to vote. Maybe a couple more seconds. All right, so I think we can move on to see the results to see what people think. Okay, so it looks like most of the folks today believe that 90% of our basic service electricity supply comes from fossil fuels. Followed by, so there's this two-way tie for second place for 50% and 70%. Great. So we can close the poll. So the answer is that the mix of fossil fuels, it changes all the time. But we can see in our slide here on the right side, there's a pie chart with Eversource basic service current mix. So there's coal, for example, there's 9%, oil at 6%. We see natural gas is the biggest source at 37%. But there are also some imported power at 21%. So in this particular case with fossil fuels, it would be a little bit above 50%. But then we have to include the imported power there most likely as well. So with renewables, we only see a small percentage. We see some wind and some solar, some hydro, but we really do need to move that needle forward with renewable energy. So with community choice aggregation, or CCA, as a lot of people refer to it, what it is that the whole town or city can decide to procure electricity on behalf of its residents and small businesses, and take advantage of that bulk purchase, all of those customers put together, and get really good favorable rates for electricity for their customers. How it works is that all of the accounts currently enrolled with basic service are automatically enrolled into the program. And then if some don't want to participate, they can opt out of the program. It is approved by the Department of Public Utilities. So it is reviewed by the government to make sure that all customers are protected. And it's also known as community electricity aggregation, and as Larry mentioned, also as municipal aggregation. So at Green Energy Consumers, we do talk more about green municipal aggregation because we do focus on the community choice aggregation plus renewables. So basically, it just adds more green electricity to the default option that everyone's enrolled in. And because you have more renewable energy in the offering, you have some greenhouse gas reductions associated with your program. A lot of towns decide to do multi-year contracts, so you can support contracts through a longer term, sometimes two years. We've seen as much as 3 years. You could go longer than that, but that's been the case so far. So typically, a town would start with their offering at 5% green above the state law. And we've seen, for example, the Cape Light Compact is a really big aggregation in the Cape, and they're doing 1% class 1 renewables. We'll touch upon those in a little bit. And then Brookline is doing a lot of their support. They're doing 30% of their offering is green above the requirement, and Newton's doing 46%. So this is what right now the renewable energy requirements look like for the state of Massachusetts. There's basically 2 statutes in place. One's called the RPS, so that's the Renewable Portfolio Standard, and the other one's the Clean Energy Standard. But basically, they just require that all utilities, including Eversource, must source the percentage of their electricity from renewable energy sources every year. And as you can see in the chart, it does go up by a certain percentage every year. So this would be specifically the green goes for class 1 renewables, and those are going to be your New England-based 0 to low greenhouse gas emitting resources, and they're new, right? They're built after 1997, so they do create new projects, and they're basically the way to go. So right now in 2020, Eversource is at 20% of their offering has to come from renewable sources, from class 1 resources. If Medfield would decide to have a offering that's 5% more green above the requirement, it would be a couple years ahead, right? Because we're adding more renewable content than required by law. And if you decide to go up to 10%, which would be great, then you're even 6 years ahead of state law. So that would really move the needle on all the renewable energy projects that we can have in the region. So these are some options that are available to you, but of course your town can decide which content to go with. So let's go ahead and kick off our second poll of the evening. So basically we're trying to decide, or trying to help Medfield see what is the correct green percentage that you desire. So the question is, how much renewable energy should Medfield support above the state mandate? The first option is 1% above the state requirement, bringing the total to 21% renewable. 5% above the state requirement, 25 total. 10% above the state requirement, 30% total. Or 20% above the state requirement for 40% total. We'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, and if you can see the results. All right, whoa, very good. Very impressive. So it looks like 52% said that 20% above state requirement would be the way to go for Medfield, followed by 10% and then 5%. Interestingly enough, no one voted for 1%. All right, great. Thank you. We can close that poll. So this is what typically a CCA program looks like. As we mentioned, the program usually automatically enrolls all of the accounts that are enrolled with basic service. So this is going to be your big pool of people that's here. And your default rate would be the 5%, the 10%, or even the 20% that you decide to go with. Most programs do decide to offer an opt-up offering, and that's going to be 100% renewable. So that's usually available to whoever wants to be above and beyond and have a good impact on the environment. But there's also an opt-down offering for the folks that are a little bit more conscientious about their financials, so they can just decide not to have that additional green component. Anyone enrolled with a competitive supplier is not enrolled in the CCA program. We usually advise people to look at their contracts if they do have a competitive supplier, to see what their terms look like, to make sure that they don't have anything competing with the community choice aggregation before they decide to move over. And at any time, which is great, at any time when the aggregation, you can opt out of the aggregation if you believe basic service is the best way to go. And you can also opt in at any time. So there's no penalties, no fees involved whatsoever if you do decide to leave the program, which is really good for the consumer. So who's involved with the community choice aggregation? Here's a big chart of who's involved. So we're gonna start from the right and take it to the left. So the first player is going to be you, the community, right? So here's Medfield with all of your houses. And basically how it's gonna work is that you're gonna hire a CCA or an energy consultant who's gonna help you acquire a contract with a competitive supplier. So that's gonna be usually done through a competitive procurement process for the electricity, right? So they get a contract for the electricity that the CCA program is gonna take. And then if you do have the green component also available to you in your program, then you're going to have what is called a REC supplier, or in this case, it would be us, Green Energy Consumers Alliance. This is what we do. And we provide the RECs for the green municipal aggregations. Basically, in order to ensure that you are having the percentage renewable in your offering, you have to match all the electrons that you said you would with renewable energy certificates. So those are the RECs that we're talking about. And in Massachusetts, the class 1 RECs are going to be, again, from new sources that were built after 1997 And they're going to be from low to zero emitting resources like wind and solar, hydro, there's landfill gas and biomass, among others. And they're going to be physically located within New England. But there's some adjacent areas in New York and Canada that can also qualify if they fulfill all those buckets. So with that, we have the competitive supplier would have that contract with your rec supplier. So you, the community, you can have that power flowing for the electrons through the supplier and also for the recs through green energy consumers, hopefully. And you can make a difference with your program. All right. So basically, we want to highlight on how the rates work, right? Because one of the main focuses that a lot of people think about community choice aggregation is how can this help me save money? And also then while adding more renewable energy content. So the town of Winchester, when they first started the aggregation, it was in July of 2017. And they decided that their first offering was going to be 5% green to begin with. So you can see here in this green line in the bottom is going to be the price of their first renewable energy contract and the CCA contract for the first couple of years. So then we have Eversource, their basic service, which is what everyone else gets who does not have a competitive supplier, what the rates were at the time. So because the program started in July, right, we have those the summer rates for Eversource. But Eversource changes their rates every 6 months. So we know what the rate is going to be now, but we don't know what this rate will be 6 months down the line. So you're still hedging, right, your price to make sure that you will get a good price for your program. But it is not guaranteed, as you can see here. When Winchester first started, the aggregation price was a little bit higher than basic service. But once Eversource changed their rates for the winter, right, you can see here they spiked up, and then they were much higher than what Winchester was paying. And then Eversource changed the rates again, as it does every 6 months. So you can see here the fluctuations every 6 months through the length of Winchester's first contract. So here and highlighted in different colors, you can see that sometimes of the contract, the Winchester residents, they were paying a little bit more above basic service to have the aggregation in place. But as you can see, they're just those little pockets here in the bottom. But if you can see the areas here shaded in green, these are their savings that they saw throughout the length of the contract. And not only are they seeing their savings, they're seeing that 5% additional green that they're supporting. So they're seeing that their savings and renewable energy is possible. Something that we do also want to point out is that for those folks who want to be more proactive and have that 100% green option, for Winchester, we can see here, it's this line, the second line on top. So that's a little bit higher because supporting more renewable energy content, right, it comes at a higher price. But so you can see here, it was competitive compared to the winter rates, but it was a little higher than basic service. But Winchester was very happy with their program. And as a matter of fact, you can see here that at the end of their first contract, at the end of 2019, they decided to renew and even increase their renewable energy percentage to 10%, which was great. So with even 10% green in their default offering, they were saving money here in these winter rates compared to basic service. So what are towns doing in Massachusetts to promote community choice aggregation and green municipal aggregation? Well, you can see here in the map, these are all the towns and cities in Massachusetts that have programs in place. So we have all the shades of greens and browns are active programs right now. So as you can probably figure out, the greens are towns that have renewable energy content in them, and that's going to be your class 1 resources. So class 1 is the ones that are going to create that additionality and have that really big impact within the region. Then you can see the browns, they have some options that you can opt up to have some class 1 resources, but they're mostly just staying within the state law. So as you can tell, it's a little bit hard for some communities to go all the way to 100%, just because the goal sometimes, again, to community choice aggregation is to have competitive rates compared to basic service. But it is possible to do it with the opt-out programs, and then just slowly build up your way to your default offering to keep increasing that renewable energy content, so you can have an impact and also do good by your residents and your customers. So like green energy consumers, we source all of our renewable energy certificates from local resources. We tend to focus as much as we can in Massachusetts, but we do have some resources within the rest of the New England states. We always try to be local. And we buy from zero to low emitting resources. So as you can see, there's a lot of wind in our portfolio. We have some low impact hydro. Those are going to be your small hydro projects. And we have solar all across the state. We have residential solar, we have large scale solar, and we have some also anaerobic digestion as well. So something to be aware of when you are looking to look for other sources of electricity supply is that the Attorney General published a report back in 2018, and they put an update up to in 2019, is that they've seen that residents that they decide to go out to get their own competitive electricity supply as individuals, they don't do as well. The competitive supplier might give them a great option and a great price to begin with and their contract, just to get them hooked and get that contract signed. But through the length of the contract, individuals actually tend to lose money and pay more than basic service. So the table that we're showing here in the bottom shows you how much the consumers have lost over the course of many years if they decide to be in competitive service, in competitive supply instead of basic service. So that's something that community choice aggregation can really help, is that since the town is procuring electricity for its entire population, it protects its residents from competitive suppliers, so they don't get stuck with losing money, and also with them knocking on your door and calling to sell you that electricity supply. So if you want to learn more about green municipal aggregation in general, or the work that we do, we did publish a report back in February of 2020. It's available on our website, and the link is there on the slide deck. So again, if you have any questions, definitely please feel free to write them on the chat. And if not, save them till the end, and then we'll have a question and answer period. And if anything does not get answered today, feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I'll be happy to help.
Thank you. That was great. I appreciate it. And I should have said earlier today that we have a lot of resources, and we're adding to them all the time on the Medfield Energy Committee's website, on the town website. So we've got that. And now I'm going to spend a little bit of time bringing this conversation to Medfield to talk a little bit more about what it means for us. And let me find that and share and start the slideshow. So this is the warrant article that we're talking about. And it's basically just giving the Board of Selectmen the okay to go forward and move into this process. And then the second part of the article just talks about how we would like to have Class 1 renewable energy certificates greater than required. And that is just what Jamie has been talking about, trying to get the supply in Medfield to have more local green energy. So why is the CCA a good choice for Medfield? I think, Jamie, you made a great case, but we get the advantage of bulk purchase, a competitive bidding process, a potential for savings for plan participants. We can't promise that, right? It's due to the market conditions, but you saw how good it was in, excuse me, Winchester. The Department of Public Utilities has approved the plan. They have a lot of rules about this program. So there are oversights built in. Residents can opt out and back in at any time without any penalty. So you like it, you stay in. You don't like it, you go out. It's a low-cost program. It has minimal oversight by town employees once we get it set up. And most importantly, or one important aspect, is it more renewable energy than Eversource currently supplies. So we think it's a great idea. What would happen if when the article is passed? Let's be positive. Medfield will hire an energy broker, will create that will help us create a plan that will fulfill the requirements of the Department of Public Utilities. There'll be a public review process. Then we will wait for approval from the state Department of Public Utilities, I guess it is, and that can take some time. Some of that can take up to a year, maybe. So we're really happy to be getting this going now. Then we'll inform the community about it, and then we'll actually go out to the bid process, procure the electricity, tell them what kinds of programs we want. Do we want a 5% program? We want an opt up to 100, you know, make those distinctions, go out to bid for that. And then I want to say that if we get to this point, of course, we definitely hope we'll move forward. But if we get to this point and the market conditions aren't good, there's no requirement to move forward. You can kind of sit there and wait till the iron's hot, and then you can strike. So I feel like that just gives us another set of you know, checks and balances. Then there'd be, once we have the prices, that we'd enroll, have an announcement, let people, anybody who totally wasn't interested in this, they would just opt out at this point. And then from that point, we just monitor the program and try and encourage people to opt up to the different levels. I thought it might be interesting to just look at another town's different rates. This is for Natick, and Jeremy Marset, who was on our agenda but had to go to his own selectmen's meeting in Natick, has the program in Natick, and you can see their standard green program, which is the default, has 24% renewable energy. They have an opt-up to 100%. They have a basic brown, which is the opt-down. So the basic brown, 20%, is the same renewable content that you're getting from Eversource Basic. And if you look at the prices on the right, you'll see that the basic brown even is more competitive than Eversource Basic. And that has been the case up until, this was the price until June 30th, and now they've switched into their summer rate July 1st. So as Jama showed you, sometimes you're above and sometimes you're below, but history with what she showed you with Winchester had savings overall over time. So what would change for you? The name of your energy supplier on your Eversource bill. Right here, it tells you who your supplier is. Right now, this person has Eversource Basic fixed. You get a new supplier name in here. That'd be the only change on your bill. If you have solar panels, net metering continues unchanged. If you have budget billing, that remains unchanged. And Eversource continues to maintain infrastructure, deliver the power, send you your bill, repair things if you need a repair. And now I see we have our special guest, Jeremy Marset, has arrived from one meeting to another. Jeremy, do you just want to comment for a minute or two about how the program works in Natick, and if any concerns or how it's been going?
Sure. Sorry I'm late. I had another meeting in my actual job. But actually in Natick, where I work, they have had community choice aggregation for a number of years now. Speaking with our sustainability coordinator, yesterday I asked the percentage of folks that participate. It's over 70% in Natick. She said that many communities are even higher than that. So it's a very popular program. I think we're on our third or so supplier contract in Natick. And each year, the Board of Selectmen, when they look at the electricity contract with the supplier, when they go out to bid, each year they tend to ratchet up the green portion. So in Natick, there's actually 3 choices. Most people opt for the greenest choice, and it's been quite successful. You know, having that aggregated purchasing power to select a supplier, and most folks don't know the difference. You know, they still get their utility bill from Eversource. They still call Eversource if there's an outage. You know, they still get the same, you know, response should there be, you know, sort of a power outage or whatnot. So the supplier and your bills, you know, delivery is still all through Eversource. So it's been a very great program for Natick.
Thank you. So thank you, Jeremy, for chiming in, and again to Larry and Jama for giving us that great presentation. So now we're going to have some questions and answers. So Andy, I think, is going to handle that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a couple questions here. First one is, a question. Someone was asking why not 100% when we were doing our first poll. So Jamie, can you just explain that one more time? Why we wouldn't want 100% when we're talking about 20%, et cetera?
Great. Yes. So the reason why it's not recommended at first to begin with 100% for your default offering is because most folks that are starting the community choice aggregation is because you want to have a rate that is competitive with basic service. And if you start with 100% green, you might not be able to do that just because the renewable energy market is high at the moment, right? You saw that chart where the renewable energy requirement goes up every year. So there's not enough renewable energy in the region to meet that demand. So the market for renewable energy is high. So with 100%, it is suggested that you have an opt-up option so that the folks that want to support 100% can definitely go to 100% and the rate is there. But for the default program for the entire community, it's recommended that you have a lower percentage at this time.
Great. And someone also asked about the what REC stood for, and Megan answered that it stands for Renewable Energy Certificate. And we have another question: how will the percentage of renewable sources be chosen?
Okay, I think Jeremy had wanted to say something before about the 100%.
Yeah, if I could just expand on that. I mentioned that Natick has 3 choices. One is the standard green. That's the standard one by default. That choice has 24% green energy. There is also a 100% green option in Natick. And then there is what's the so-called basic brown, which is basically the state standard. So each of those comes with, a different cost per kilowatt. And as compared to, I actually compared it to my own bill. So Eversource Basic, say, what you get straight from Eversource, at least the time that I compared this about 3 months ago. Eversource Basic was like 12.5 cents per kilowatt. The standard green offered by Natick was 11.26 cents per kilowatt. The 100% green was 13 and change cents per kilowatt, and the basic brown, which was the cheapest offering, was 11 cents per kilowatt. So, and those choices those vary each time that the town goes out for a supply contract. They put that in the bid, what they would like to have, and over the course of 3 different bids, this is what Natick has arrived at currently based on what they're seeing customers want. I did not get the breakout of who's in each of these categories, but you try not to have too many selections so that you get the best price. So there's kind of that balance between having enough options, but also having, getting the best price when you go to bid.
Great. Okay, the next question is something about Medfield specific. Does the town have to pay for an energy broker? And would there be a need for an override to pay for that, or would this be in the town budget?
I don't know who wants to take it on, but no. So the town itself would not be the one paying the energy broker. The fee for the energy broker is actually added into the supply rate that you get. So the energy broker actually does not get paid until the aggregation actually starts and the power, so to speak, starts flowing from the competitive supplier that the aggregation chooses to the aggregation itself. So usually, I think it's like 1/10 of a penny per kilowatt hour is usually the average rate. So it's very small compared to your energy supply overall. But again, they don't get paid until the power actually starts flowing. So it's going to come from all the residents that are enrolled in the program.
And just a point, that's priced into the retail price that is charged to the consumer, as it is in Natick and everywhere else.
Okay, and then I did have someone who is questioning. Catherine, do you want to talk a little bit? I just unmuted you. Catherine is saying that she thinks this has been tried in Medfield before. Do you want to talk about that, Catherine?
No, we are actually new to Medfield, and we wondered whether it had been tried here before.
Oh, I see.
And so my husband Richard and I, we actually do 100% through green energy consumers, and we're fortunate that we can, and it's not a financial liability for us. but it just seemed like something that Medfield might have given a shot at before, and I wondered what the outcome was if in fact you had given it the attempt.
We have not attempted it before. This is our first foray into it.
Yeah. So since I've got the unmute button, if we decided to put in, say, a solar array around the former landfill, or some other project where we're providing renewable energy, could we fold that into this?
It gets a little complicated, but there are ways. We've identified a couple of different ways that a community can do that. It requires another level of contracts that can be done and a commitment by the community that would work with the aggregation. We go into that in our report a little bit, but what we suggest to communities is get the aggregation up and running. It works as a system on a parallel track to, if you want to develop solar in your community, you should look at it and do that on the merits of whether or not it's a good site for the solar, and then think about how you could link them together.
Okay, thanks. I know that when it was done in Dover, which is the next town north, if you're not familiar with it, you had to sign up, and it was like 115 households, something like that, could benefit from that, but not the community as a whole. And we would be in favor of seeing, everybody in Medfield be able to have this opportunity.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, the next question, can we go back, Jema, to the ramp chart? Fred would like to hear an explanation of why this is important and why CCA accelerating the ramp is important.
Yeah, I'll take that one if Jima
Okay.
could put the graph back up. It'll take a second. So we're very concerned. We agree with the scientists, the climate scientists, who say that we need to get to zero emissions in our whole economy as fast as possible. Certainly no later than 2050. And yeah, a new report came out today, sort of further establishing that as a need. And in order to get to zero emissions by 2050, one of the things that would have to be done probably by, say, 2040 is to have zero emissions in the electricity sector. The electricity sector is probably the easiest part of the economy to get to zero emissions. It's going to be harder to get emissions down in for home heating, for commercial heating. It's going to be harder in industry. It's going to be harder in aviation. It's going to be harder in transportation overall. And so if you look at the graph, Massachusetts has a renewable portfolio standard that won't get us to zero emissions in the electricity sector by 2050. And so that's why we want to add at least as much as we can. So our organization sees aggregation as being one way to get there faster. And we're also advocating to increase the renewable portfolio standard. And there's a bill in the legislature that would essentially do that. That combination of a state requirement increasing the length of these bars and then adding voluntarily on the community basis more renewable energy, that's how we can get to zero emissions by, say, 2040. So we bring it back to the science, and we think that's the reason for that. The other reason, I guess it's worth, is we encourage individual households like Catherine's to go to 100% if they can. But if you think about it, if we were to add 20% or 10% to this, the bar is going up, and we can get to 100 through the combination by the time that the science dictates.
Okay, James is going to talk about this next question about how to select the resources.
All right, I just realized I was muted. So as I mentioned in the presentation, we believe that the way that you have a good impact with your renewable energy content is that if you support the Class 1 resources. So those, by the definition from the Renewable Portfolio Standard, so again, they're new projects built after 1997, zero to low emitting greenhouse gas emissions. And so you got solar, wind, anaerobic digestion, and hydro. But we also try to focus within the region as much as we can. So basically, everyone who's in aggregation programs that we provide the renewable energy certificates for, as well as our own customers that have that 100% option through the utilities, is going to get a mix of what you see there in our map. So again, we try to buy local as much as we can because we're trying to give that impact to our communities and make sure that those developers have enough to keep these projects online and also build more, right? We want more built within our own backyard so we know where the power is coming from. So you can tell that when you're in aggregation with us, you can say, this is exactly where your electricity is coming from. But if you decide not, if you get an energy broker that's not with us, we do, again, recommend that you look for those Class 1 resources because that's where you're going to get that impact.
Great. Okay, another question about comparing services. Would we get the same service level in terms of reliability and redundancy?
Yes, what we're talking about is changing the flavor of the electricity supply, choosing essentially where the generation comes from. But Eversource is responsible for keeping the power flowing in the community. So they'll do the billing, the metering, then the billing, and they'll maintain the poles and the wires. And they just distribute the electricity that is running through the wires. And so reliability won't change, which is why you'll continue to get your Eversource bill, and they'll charge you, as Megan showed it early on, about half the cost is for delivery and half the cost is for supply.
Okay. Another question. Has the CCA been responsible for retiring any old or inefficient generation?
We're kind of thrilled. The model of aggregation is growing pretty rapidly in the state. Naticks has been around for a while, and now more and more communities. I just got a text that the city of Boston has been waiting for the state to approve its plan and did today. And so we project by 2022 that aggregation is going to be responsible for the equivalent of about 200 large-scale wind turbines in the state. If you can picture that, to convert that to solar, that would be quite a bit of solar in Massachusetts. And so with each megawatt hour that's produced by the wind, by the solar, by the anaerobic digestion of the low impact hydro, that will displace 1 megawatt hour of fossil fuels. Generally, what it's going to displace is natural gas. And so I think if you look in the last 5 years or so, there has been a lot of retiring fossil fuel plants. First, it was coal, and coal's just about out. And then oil is just about out of the mix. Sometimes it's maybe 1% a year of each, something like that. We get that only on the coldest days of the year or the hottest days of the year. But now natural gas is what we call the marginal resource that is used unless we find ways of alternatives. So energy efficiency would reduce natural gas usage, so would the wind and solar. So we're pretty proud of the fact that these 200 wind turbines I'm talking about are in addition to what's required by state law. And that's communities' choosing to do that. And Now we might even add Medfield to our projections and make it 201 wind turbines.
Okay, another question. How long will the process take once the warrant is approved in Medfield?
Well, I did a blog a couple weeks ago, and you may want to go to greenenergyconsumers.org/blog, and where we've been tracking how long it takes for these plans to get approved by the State Department of Public Utilities. Sometimes it takes a long time. If I remember correctly, Natick didn't have that long a time from when it got approval at the local level. Then what you have to do is you work with your broker who writes the plan that has to go to the State Department of Public Utilities to get approved. And on the way to the Department of Public Utilities, the Department of Energy Resources has to sign off. That usually doesn't take long, but the Department of Public Utilities, I guess, has been understaffed or something. But in some cases, they only took 3 months to approve something, but that has been stretched out to almost a year. The fact that Boston applied and they had kind of a complicated plan, that I think created a bit of a logjam. Now that that has been approved today, I think that other communities will go quicker. I think we'll get back to that 3 to 6 months at the Department of Public Utilities, and then things will happen more quickly. And once it's approved by the Department of Public Utilities, what happens is the broker goes to work and puts it out to bid and manages that process. And then the community decides, the chief executive officer of the community will work with the broker to select a supplier.
Okay, this might be for Jamie, I'm not sure, but why are the Class 1 RECs more important or better than other sources of renewable energy?
You're on mute, Gemma.
I apologize. So I have pulled up a graph that we have. It's also in our blog and on our website, but it shows that why class matters. So I thought this could be a good way for folks to see. Basically, for Class 1, what you get for the renewable energy certificate, it matters if the project is going to get billed or not, if they're going to make a profit with that project. If you look in the far left, this is for an old New England hydro project. We have in all the bars here in the yellow, what's the cost to develop the project. And then in the blue, we have what is the revenue just from the electrons itself, right? Someone has a contract for the electrons. This is the revenue that they get. And then the green here, this is for the renewable energy certificate. This is what you're going to be supporting the project with. So as you can see here, this hydro project doesn't really need the revenue from the renewable energy certificate to get billed and to make a profit. Same with a non-New England wind energy project, right? In Texas, there's a lot of wind. South Dakota, there's a lot of wind. So they don't need that extra money from the renewable energy certificate to make a profit. The project's going to be built no matter if they sell the REC or not. But it is really inexpensive, so that's why you might see a lot of towns in Massachusetts doing national wind RECs in their default offerings, so they can say that they're green, but they're not making a difference. It's not a new project that's getting built to have a bigger impact within the area that they're located in, which is not even in New England, right? It's somewhere else in the nation. But once you get into here at the far right, and you look at the New England, for example, this is a wind energy project, you see the difference, right? They get in the blue the revenue from the electrons, and then in the green, they get that revenue from the REC that makes them profitable, that allows the developer to really build the project and move forward. And that's a new project that does get added here. So this is why it does matter to promote those Class 1 resources.
Great. Okay, Megan, one of the next question really is something that I think falls into what you wanted to do next. It says, are there ways to help this process be expedited?
That is excellent. Let me share my screen. All right, first I'll let you see me, then I'll share my screen.
share. Start on the current slide. Okay, so thank you for all the questions and answers. That was great. And we hope you agree that CCA is a good choice for Medfield. So what are we going to do next? We hope you tell your friends that this was a great, that you learned a lot, and it's really a great program for Medfield. Then we hope you attend the next forum on the climate goals, which is going to be August 17th. It's also going to be a Zoom forum. And we hope you get to town meeting and support the article, because given the, well, for lots of reasons, but especially given the long lead time, we really just want to get this going. And there's so many checks and balances in it going forward that it really doesn't make any sense not to approve it at town meeting. So we hope we can generate a lot of broad support. And then of course, we'd love for you to join either the Medfield Energy Committee or Medfield Environment Action and help us out going forward. Is this where I'm supposed to wrap this up and launch our last poll?
I will say, I just want to draw attention to some things that are happening in chat. If everybody can look, Jeremy has put some additional information up there, and Jema has put her website up there. If anybody's interested in getting more information, just go to the chat. And if does anybody have any more questions?
I think Fred wants to say something.
Okay. Fred, let me just unmute you. Hold on a second. Oh, now you can unmute yourself, Fred.
Thank you very much. So I'm Fred Davis. I'm chair of the Medfield Energy Committee, and I just want to thank Megan and Bob, Andy, and Hilly, and everyone else who helped make this program happen. It's much appreciated. Thank you, everybody.
And again, big thank yous to Larry and Jema. This was awesome. I think everybody has the information that they need going forward. So now we'll launch that poll, the last poll. Yes, and we hope we'll see you again in August. We'll keep this up, and if you want to stick around for the answers, we can do that. So the first question is, did you find this forum informative? Yes or no? And then do you think a CCA is a good choice for Medfield? Yes or no? Give you just a couple more seconds to do that. Okay, hopefully it was easy to say yes, but let's find out. Excellent. Good. Well, we're really glad that this all was informative for you. And if there are no more questions from anybody out there, we'll wrap this up. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good night.